Hello and welcome to News and Views. I'm John Banville. Our guest this week is Senator Joe Robach. Senator Robach, thank you very much for being here.
John, good to have this opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the issues and things that are going on here in the state capitol and let folks know at home what we're working on or what's pertinent.
We already had the State of the State address, which basically gives a blueprint for Governor Cuomo's plans for the future. He's also unveiled his budget, and we had a brief discussion over generally how you're reviewing the budget. However, we're now to the point where we're looking at the nuts and bolts of it. We're now to the point where we're discussing and negotiating with the governor possible changes to the state budget. Senator Robach, can you tell us where we are in this process for the state budget?
Certainly that, the budget document is such a critically important thing to every New Yorker of every age because obviously it does two huge things. It drives the provision of what programming, what services, impacts the conditions of roads, the criminal justice system, economic development, K through 12 education, higher education, healthcare, you name it, senior services, but it also is impacted by the revenue side, which is how we collect the resources in order to provide those services. So it's critically important. And while we're in the early stages, I am very happy that the process, since now Governor Cuomo has been in place for the third year in a row, we have stuck to something I fought very hard for, the committee process, the joint budget committees, where really not only does it open and make the process more transparent on what the issues are we're stuck on or debating between the Assembly, the Senate, the governor, whatever it might be, it also gives much more, I feel, power to rank and file legislators to have their say, as well as not just special interest groups, if you will, but rank and file people and everyday citizens to chime in on the budget process. So I do think that's good. We've begun that. I have the honor and privilege of chairing the Human Services Committee for the joint conferences that goes on. Last year, the Assembly, my counterpart was Keith Wright. I'm not sure who it will be this year, but we are now going through the budget, trying to maybe move some things around, really look at the whole thing comprehensively, whether it's perhaps taking money from one area and putting it to another that we feel will impact New Yorkers and our own constituents better. All that's going on right now as we get ready to go to a series of public meetings that will be televised for all New Yorkers to watch and see on us trying to get this budget done, not only on time, but openly and with some opportunity to know what the real issues are, the dollar amounts, what that money's intended to do, and how it will do it.
Senator Robach, you said you're going to be chairing the Human Services category for the state budget. For our viewers at home, can you tell us generally what areas, what falls under the areas of human services?
Human services is social services, labor, a lot of things that will affect youth programs, Office for the Aging, a lot of that gets all lumped in together in one big, certainly the whole area of, Medicaid will be quasi under health, but also a little of the preventive part under our committee.
Do you, the governor has indicated that he wanted to have an expedited budget process this year. The goal, I believe, is to have a budget completed and enacted by March 21st. Do you feel that we're on track for that right now?
I think we are on track for that, though I would say this. Whether, and I'm willing to stay, we have to be doing our job. Certainly I would rather be home in the district than be in Albany, but to me, as long as the budget's done by April 1st, and we have the best budget as possible, that to me is the best outcome. So if the governor has kind of put this date out of March 21st, hopefully within that 9 days additional that would take us to April 1st. We certainly ought to be able to get it done in that time frame. And I believe we will, and I certainly hope we will, because when we don't, not only are we not doing our job, but we oftentimes leave public employees, school districts, local governments in somewhat of a quandary, not knowing what to expect by us meeting our budgetary obligation and deadline, hence moving down the road, not knowing what the financial impact of that will be to other partners in government and even people in the private sector who work in government as well. So I'm happy to say I believe that this will be the third year in a row that we will again not only have a budget done on time, do it in a fairly or the most open process since I've been in the legislature, and very, very happy to report it does not look like any new taxes will be included in there. And I think that's good, because certainly everywhere I go, whether people are seniors on a fixed income, working families, business people, they feel like they're at their limit, and I think we should be responsive to that. I believe we will.
As I said, the governor has proposed his budget, and it is a proposal, and you're in the process of reviewing it with your colleagues. Have you heard from any local organizations their opinions of the state budget, whether they're for it, whether they're against it, whether they feel that there need to be adjustments made, things of that nature?
Well, certainly as part of the process, and this goes on separate from the budget committees. As an individual legislator, we have a number of people up, especially on Tuesdays here in the state capitol. And today there was a number of people in here from Rochester on some policy issues, from the YMCA on how they feel they could be part of the equation for after-school programming and other things. I had a number of students from St. John Fisher, my alma mater, Brockport College, talking about really funding of individual students, programs for TAP, C-STEP, HEOP, and things that help them access higher education, and even had a lot of people here who provide the service of advocating for people with developmental disabilities, which is something I think New York does very well, but they were unhappy with some of the proposals because it would not allow them to create any new housing opportunities and even limit what they call day habilitation or closed shop work for those people. So yeah, that's part of the process. As much as people will kid me that I like to talk, you also have to be a good listener in this business too. Not only because people have the right to speak up on what they like in government, but I think that we as elected officials that have that honor and privilege have the obligation to try to listen as well and see what we can do on their behalf. If you're available, I'd like to have you back on future programs to discuss the budget as we progress through the process, because many of our viewers at home, it's really a mystery how the budget gets proposed, and the next thing you know, it's voted upon. Right.
But there's a lot of working on in between there. I'd like to shift gears a little bit now, Senator, to an issue that's been a hot button, emotional issue in Albany, and that's the issue of gun control.
Sure.
And there was legislation that was passed, and there were concerns raised. And I guess there are some there's some things that need to be addressed to affect this new law. I'd like to get your feedback on your views of this.
Yeah, there was a bill that was passed recently, and I should start out first and say this. Good or bad, just for the record, New York, before the SAFE Act was passed, that was the governor's program bill, so to speak, New York has some of the strictest gun laws in the nation, and we have. And I think most things people understand, rightfully so. Background checks, criminal checks. We don't want the wrong people, dangerous people, to be armed in the state, and that makes sense for public protection. So when we do that, we really have to look at two things, to me. Not just gun control, but crime control. How do we stop those murders from happening? And it's kind of over now in a way, or past, but certainly I have spoken up that I thought the bill the governor proposed missed the mark somewhat in the sense and was passed because what we did was put the focus on people who've never committed a crime and law-abiding gun owners really are going to make them pay more money, jump through additional hoops. But I've yet had anybody explain to me how that will stop crime. Whereas what I'm proposing, and still proposing, and hopefully we will pass a bill, if you look at gun murders and you take out crimes of passion, husband, wife, father, son, always usually in the mid to high 90th percentile, 94, 96, 98% of those murders in this state are committed, when it's a firearm, with an illegal handgun. Stolen, brought in from another state, never registered by the owner. So logic dictates to me, those are the people you have to focus in on. They do 96% of the crime. So I say, why not make harsher penalties for if you have an illegal gun, if you have a stolen gun, if you're in the commission of a felony, if you discharge that illegal weapon in the commission of a felony, tack on another 5 years. And I know some people don't like that because they say it costs a lot of money to keep people in jail. But if you want to stop crime, not my opinion, the statistics clearly bear out, those are the individuals that exhibit that behavior and go after those weapons that commit all the crimes. Not my next door neighbor who's a policeman, a lawyer, a doctor, a school teacher. They're not the ones that are doing that. So that piece, we're still going to try to do a separate bill, but I felt very strongly that on the bill that was passed, they could have put those components in and eased up on some others to really make the bill not just about gun control, but about crime control. And then certainly the other huge piece, which, you know, it does tear your heart out, whether it's in our state or anywhere else, when someone, due to a history of delusional behavior, mental health issue, whatever it may be, arbitrarily goes out and, you know, kills randomly people they don't know, whether it's young people, old people, whatever it might be. That is so hard to predict or define. But the one thing that we know is that if we really expanded Kendra's law, I believe, you know, we've made great strides in taking the stigma off mental health patients and people, and we've got great treatment modalities, counseling, pharmaceutical applications that help people with depression, schizophrenia, another almost everything in the mental health spectrum, which is great. But what stigmatizes them the most is when someone isn't monitored, isn't taking medication, and then goes out and does something terrible. Certainly that captures the attention of everybody, regardless of the gun. So the other thing that I think we should have done is moved Kendra's law to make sure that these people can be monitored if they really are threatening violent behavior or a danger to themselves or the public. We need to try to address that if our goal is to protect people. Now, if people just want to make law-abiding people have to trade in the gun they have now or do something else, or there's some people who I disagree with who are against the Second Amendment and don't believe anybody has the right to own a gun, then maybe you would think that legislation was helpful. I really didn't. And what also I think is troubling is now some of my colleagues who voted for that are saying, we don't want to do these crime measures because we've already done something about guns. I see it very differently. The only reason why guns are a danger to me is if it's used to harm somebody, not if it's used for legitimate purposes. So we're going to work through that. You'll be hearing more about that as the session progresses.
I want to thank you very much. That's all the time we have for this week. But if you're available, we'd love to have you back to bring us back up to speed on keeping New York safe and the state budget.
Thanks,
Thank you very much. We'll see you soon.